Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 12 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz. Congratulations. Joining me for this fine recording session are one Stephen Howard.
Congratulations.
Amanda Howard.
Congratulations.
Josh Cox.
Congratulations.
And last but certainly never ever least, one Gary Delaney.
The best parts about this show, Gundams fighting giant monsters and a shadowy government cabal with mysterious plans. This episode delivers 0%. Congratulations.
I mean, they're not Gundams, but that's a whole other thing there.
I originally wrote down robots, and I was like, I don't know, maybe there's a fancy name. And I was like, I think it's Gundams, but I'm not, I give a shit so little that I didn't even Google it. And I Google a lot of weird stuff.
You could have went with Evas there.
Oh. Start from scratch, sorry.
Start over, guys. Let's do it again.
I don't remember that word.
It is a perfect tie-in. There's a new Gundam that's coming out from basically most of the EVA creators. Yep. Gundam GQUU.
And that's maybe what my brain went to. Yeah, I don't know.
Yep. I'm secretly looking forward to that, but that's a whole other problem.
TBGC Season 3. Let's go.
I don't think that'll be out by that time, but maybe like Season 20 or something like that to get into it.
There you go.
All right, we are here to talk about the final episode of the show, Neon Genesis Evangelion, but not the final episode of our podcast. JC, hit us with what we are discussing this time.
This time we'll be discussing episode 26 of the show, Take Care of Yourself, or The Beast That Shouted I at the Heart of the World. Taking place in Shinji's mind, he tries to find ways to feel better about himself and other people while thinking about a solution to his many problems.
Yep. And
this is Gundams and shadowy cabals.
Shadowy balls, yep.
So I watched this one with Amanda, and I actually, like I said on the last episode, I did not remember this episode. I knew that it was a second part of Instrumentality, which obviously it very much tells us in the very beginning, hey, there's a lot of instrumentality going on. There's too much actually for us to put on this thing. We're just going to give you one case, the case of Shinji, and goes into that. I don't know. I enjoyed the episode overall. It was. I don't remember why. I can't understand why I don't remember this episode from the first time that I watched the entire series, because it's so different from especially the last several episodes. Gary.
Amanda, did Steven allow you to take notes?
I didn't bother. I didn't bother asking. I didn't bother pausing. I didn't even bother pulling up my phone because he's got this immediate side eye he gives me. But Steven sits here
episode.
I know. He sits here and tells us that he doesn't remember any of this, but Steven acted the entire episode very calm, and at the end goes, "What'd you think?" As if like he was waiting for my reaction, and I honestly forgot until just now when he said that he didn't remember this episode because he acted so as if he was showing me this whole new bright world of this new episode.
So the last episode, and Gary's the last one standing who takes notes during the first watch. And I am so glad I did, because I took a lot of notes during the first watch, like absorbed the total what the fuck is going on of this episode. And then on the second watch, I literally only took 2 minor notes. This episode was so much better because I on the second watch, I just got to watch it and I didn't have to like think about it. I could just let the timer run out to get the hell to bed. JC.
Yes. I would say Steven looks like he might want to reply to that specifically, so I'll let him go here.
I do. And it's, Gary, you will get that. You can get that if you just watch it the first time through and not take notes. You can just sit there and enjoy the episode for what it is. Take in the experience of the episode.
Oh. You're missing the point. If you don't, like, by letting it all absorb, you accept the crazy batshit nature of the episode, and then your notes are based on the bar being, this is crazy. On the first watch, I'm just like, this is fucking crazy. Is anyone going to talk about how freaking crazy this is? And when you just watch it a second time, I feel like all of that just like, you're just so damp with the wetness of blah that you forget that this is crazy.
I didn't actually find this episode as crazy as the last two episodes. Like, I found this episode a lot easier to follow personally. It was not switching between characters, it's staying with one character, although there are many people talking to the characters. And I think that's the big difference between the last two episodes and this episode. Because for me, the last two episodes are Asuka, Rei, Shinji, and what's her name? Shoot,
Masato.
Thank you, Masato. All looking at the world and how the world, everyone looks at them and defines them. So it is you trying to understand yourself in the context of other people, and then this episode flips it around. It is you trying to understand yourself in the context of you, without other people, or without other people is what I would say. Is who are you personally? Who are you independent of what you think people see you as? And it was a lot easier to follow. I empathized with a significant portion of it, and it was maybe it's just because it stuck with one person, but it was much easier to follow with that. JC,
I'd say kind of splitting the difference there that I recalled as I watched it, and especially took notes why I didn't remember it, because it does get to that point where it is very focused on Shinji's introspection more than kind of the reflection of how he's perceived by others and things like that, and how, especially like you said, Masato and Asuka and Rei, um, their voices still come through, but it's kind of through the lenses of how Shinji sees them in the first place. But all that I feel like is more the latter half of the episode. The first half is still very stilted, lots of voice moments where different characters are finishing the same idea, and you're trying to follow along with that stuff. So it very much flows in that way from episode 25, I think, where it's, especially on first watch, very confusing and just trying to figure out, especially knowing what I know now about like instrumentality and all that stuff. It's still hard to figure out, like, as they're describing it, like, okay, what exactly is happening to these characters? Why are they having to do this? And they're explaining a lot in these quick little monologues between each other, but it's all just this weird stage play stuff. So to me, it's still a hard episode to follow. Easier than 25, probably a little bit, just because like I said, during the latter half there, it becomes really focused on just Shinji. And I'd agree too that I empathize with Shinji a lot here, whereas episode 25, I probably couldn't say what specifically I felt towards any given character on the first watch. Whereas, after watching it and taking a bunch of notes, that was whenever I was able to pick up on things that specific characters are dealing with. Gary?
I would say it was an easier watch than the previous episodes, but that's a really low bar to limbo under. Like,
wouldn't it be a high bar to limbo under?
High bar. It's a bar that's I'm gonna stick up your ass. Anyway. Limbo over. Anyway, it's a high bar to limbo under. Anyway, I was able to get the premise that all of this episode existed in Shinji's head. I got that. This is his own self-realization and all that. And obviously, the reason that this is contextually a difficult episode for me is because it talks a lot about anxiety and depression, and I've had these internal monologues, so I understand what they're trying to do. I think it's poorly written. I think it's chaotically shown. Like, every part of it gives me more anxiety. So I didn't like it. Tyler.
And my notes on this thing weren't anything spectacular about this episode either, because I've viewed it as basically just a lot of philosophical posturing there, or positing there, where it was just basically like asking the question of why are people the way that they are, and what makes air quotes up the heart of a person there. And I kind of, and maybe this is a discussion we'll be kind of having throughout the episode, but I kind of viewed it slightly different than the way Steven did. Of you Steven, you were more of how do I interpret myself?
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I got as well, but also within the context of how do I interpret myself with the input from the outside world around me? How do I take in how everybody else views me? The one part in there was like, if you put the negativity out in the world, that's all you get back in return then is the negativity. So if people keep hearing from you that I'm a terrible person, that's all then that they are going to give back to you is I am a terrible person. So it felt like it was just as far as like the watchability and stuff like that, I'm just going to not go down the road here of disagreeing with Gary here because that's just a lost cause. I like to watch the episode basically I watched this episode 3 different times here. Two times right away, but two separate times of me just watching the episode, trying to absorb it all, take it all in, and then the third time, which was tonight, I sat down with a notebook to try and just get some notes out of the episode here. Because it felt like to me, like I said, it was just a lot of philosophical questioning here of how are you perceived? How do you feel you're perceived there?
I think that's a valid interpretation. I really do. In terms of the how do you define yourself in yourself compared to the people around you, and I don't know. I that's actually one of the reasons why I do enjoy this episode, or I did like this episode, I should say, was that it can, I do believe, mean different things to different people as you watch it, because different people are going to empathize with different parts, and I think it hits a significant amount of different portions. Like one of the portions that I sympathize with that, and this is one of the things I think the show does a fantastic job of showing. Gary, I know you disagree with me, and that's okay, but is the idea that when he goes, oh, well, everyone just hates me. And it says, oh, yeah, well, you think everyone hates you. Yeah. Have you ever asked them, like, or has any swing to that extent? And it's like, oh, yeah, that happens to be a significant amount of time. I very much tend to just assume everyone dislikes me. It's a thing that I've always had. And it's nice to hear that it's fair. But it's nice to hear that in context.
Joking.
Oh no,
joking.
I get that it's joking. No, it's nice to hear that in context of such a well-renowned show and something that is so popular with so many people. To the understanding of you're not alone in this. There's a whole bunch of people out there that feel this insecurity, that feel this idea of, hey, everyone around you, like how what I was saying. Everyone around you doesn't like you. That feels weird. You feel alone on an island, and this show does a good job of separating that and saying, you might be on an island, but you're on an island chain. Everyone is on their own different little island here. You are not alone in that regard. Gary.
I completely disagree with Steven, as he assumes I will. That it does try to tackle like that everyone hates you and not trying to internalize like how like the fear of what other people think, but I feel like the way it explains it, maybe it tickles somebody else a little more. I felt like a very, very mediocre Hallmark movie could tell that plot better. Like it jumped around. It had a lot of flash photography in there. It did not tickle my fancy as it apparently did Steven. I got the premise, but I felt like that there was a better way to tell the story.
Real quick, as a big town guy who came to a small town and found his wife there, the Hallmark story thing I can go for.
May have been the most romantic thing I've ever heard him say.
Ooh. Anyway. Anyway, that was fire. That was fire, Steven. I don't even know. That was fire.
Sorry, JC. I jumped right in front of you there.
That's all right. Yeah, go for it. You gotta shoot those shots. No, yeah. I think technically in a conveying the message to the audience way, a Hallmark movie could tell this story better in a relatable and more sympathetic way. I think the show does a really great job of it. Like the way that we're still back, like whenever they had the moment with Shinji going into the negative realm or whatever it was at that time, the Dirac Sea. I think the show does a great job of like capturing how chaotic the mind can be. And yeah, things jump around a lot. Voices come here and there, especially as we're getting into this instrumentality moment of all beings kind of coming back together as one. But especially the way that he then kind of floats through the different concepts and drills through things, sometimes repetitively, works through it in that way. To me, it speaks to me in the way that I think about things. And maybe that's just a personal thing that because I think like that, this show resonates with me more than someone who doesn't think like that. And maybe that just then is the disconnect there. But to me, I think that while Hallmark movie could maybe on the first watch, you without any notes, you could be like, I understand the plot, as opposed to Evangelion. I think this it loses a lot from not being told in the way that Evangelion tells it. Amanda?
I'm gonna lose my train of thought here because there was a lot to take in from
All
your
right.
guys' answers. Those were good. Like honestly, most of the episode, I kind of was in Gary's corner of like, I don't really enjoy this because it's very anxious and makes me anxious. I did enjoy the part where he was doing that. Who am I? What am I? Where am I? Because we've all had those thoughts, right? Like you've had those random moments where you're like all of a sudden like, whoa, what am I in this universe? And like you're almost floating away from your body, kind of a thing. Like what? And they even animated that part with him saying that really well, I thought. Um, Also, I am a sucker for a happy ending, so if Shinji really did make a breakthrough here and that carries through, like whole episode is completely redeemed in my eyes. But I also did wonder with the different animation styles and pictures, I had to wonder like what was a purposeful choice and like did they just honestly use some of their sketches of storyboarding? Because I actually kind of really like how they did that.
I was just gonna add to JC that I think a lot of my I had a finger up longer than you, fucker. Sorry. I was just gonna say my
Gary's just dropping
disagreement with
cuss words
this
all over the
episode
place.
is mostly just I think an artistic preference. That's all I was gonna say. Like I would agree. Thank you. Tyler, I'm sorry I didn't see your finger. My microphone covers up your face for obvious reasons.
Appreciated. To touch on the art style topic there, Amanda, yeah, I thought that was like these past few episodes definitely have been transitioning from the standard art style of the show to something that's just kind of all over the place. And then also in the back of my mind, I'm starting to notice more and more after this came from that Invincible show, just noticing more and more of like the different tricks they're using to save money in the animation of the episode. So then I'm also in the back of my mind too going like, did they just start running out of money and go, oh crap, we have to finish this show? What is the way we can convey it? But I also too like the thought of, well, maybe they're doing that to kind of convey the different feelings and things like that Shinji's experiencing there. And I had another actual point before you brought that up, but now it has completely left me. So I'm just going to pass it over to Steven here. Maybe it'll come back to me.
So I was actually going to comment about the artistic style as well, and I really enjoy the artistic style. I enjoy how it goes through so many different types of styles, especially in this episode. From you have the dialogue between the unseen god narrator, whoever that might happens to be, which is the verbiage that it puts on the screen, and the character. You have the characters talking to one another in both some extraplanar portion of the world and on a stage. You have this idea of they are putting it all on a stage, but at the same time, they are having this as a real life scenario. And then you go into different art styles entirely. And those are, I enjoyed that. And Gary, I thought exactly about you, going to say, oh, they're just trying to save money. They just must run out of budget, is the exact thing that I thought you'd say. And
Tyler said
I
that.
was looking, no, but I was saying, I thought Gary would say that. But I was watching, and I really enjoy it. And I enjoyed the drawings are well done, and they are evocative of emotions, and they are evocative of what the storyteller is trying to tell you at that point in time. And to that extent, they might, I mean, maybe this is just our world now, that if it doesn't have CG, 3D, AI, DD, XL, and MNLP, whatever, it's
Okay, my
gonna,
dad.
yeah. Well, if it doesn't have any of those, it's not going to be a good thing. You can't watch a Hans Christian Andersen version of The Little Mermaid anymore, and you know, just enjoy the old school style of drawing, or just black and white drawing. Even just can't do it. Sorry, Amanda.
I did have that thought. I think I didn't really flesh it out. Tyler pointed out about the if they were just trying to save money. Honestly, if they were, I think they did it in a really good way. That's a win-win. Like, hey, if we don't have the money and we have to reuse stuff or use our storyboard episodes, like you did it in a winning way. Like that's a win-win. Absolutely good job. Gary's frown is telling me he's got a thought.
I aside from saving money, I just thought that they jumped around with the art style way too much. And some of it was just nonsensical. Like pictures of aluminum cans in a trash can. I think they're supposed to be evocative of like a black and white photo you would take in real life, like very much not a cartoony image, like very much a still photography that's kind of black and white. And then they went to this line drawing, which all I could think about was Aha's Take on Me. And I was like, these people are totally stealing from a like 80s rock US rock band. So I award them no points. This is an original idea. It has been done before and it was done better before. So sorry. No points. Yeah, film grain, multiple artistic styles. I assume that the last thing on the art style was the flash photography of pictures behind Shinji. I assume they had some relevance, but I couldn't. It was so fast and so like frantic that I couldn't see any of the pictures. The foreground of his face actually blocked out any concept of the background, which I feel like just made it look panicked and a mixture of colors. Like it was probably a cheap solution to that. Then you're like, oh, well, these are pictures of people and places and things, but it was just frantic. It was not. It was unsettling. It did not calm me and let me better accept the message. JC.
First point of order, Aha is from Norway, so not a US rock band.
I'll accept that. I don't know
Yeah.
where Aha's from.
There you go.
I'll take that.
To speak to the chaotic art style, it's Eva is a legendary cult show at this point, so many theories have come out that it was rushed for money. It was rushed for all. As far as I can tell, the best explanation is that they weren't necessarily rushed for money, but they were rushed for time. Basically, they had a plan where there was an angel that was supposed to attack a subway, and then there was an actual terrorist attack on a Japanese subway system during the production, and so
NERV gas attack. Yeah.
Yeah, they had to push back that episode and redo it, and so that delayed the whole timeline of production, and so it ended up getting to episode 25 and 26 here, and that's why it. Who knows if that's why it is entirely this way. I mean, there definitely are moments where yes, they have their sketch drawings like Take on Me, but also then they have the straight moment there whenever we go back into the sitcom world of the typical anime, and that's just straight up animated like the regular show. Like there's no necessarily budget issues showing up during that moment. So I don't necessarily know how much that really changed the full production of the show, and especially in terms of the story. Though I will say as well that with all the art style stuff, I was actually had it in my notes to point out that I loved that Shinji moment with his sketch and then just the different images flashing inside of him. Essentially, to me, it you catch like different people, different moments, different scenes from the show, and also just different images of like bubble wrap is one of them. It's just like all these different things that are flashing in there, and to me, it's all these things, these images, these experience, these other people that represent Shinji and who he is and how he became who he is. So I thought it was a great little image, and it's worked well for me, I thought.
How are you watching that? Because I feel like just in a dark room with just that on, it's just a lot of light and yeah. My super fancy TV that's got, billions of lumens of pixels and lots of colors. It's very, very vivid and very, very much like a Willy Wonka tunnel
Willy
ride.
Wonka.
Watching it in a lit room, not like where I'm currently at with my just my one light in front of me for the camera, but yeah, just normal lit room with a normal monitor.
Anyway, I was just curious because I think maybe that's part of the reason it was so jarring is that it's just so much.
There are
sit in a
definitely
dark
moments
room and
there
watch.
with if you are like pausing it and looking at the specific images, it's like they took the entire image from the show and just put that there, even if like the characters are far left and far right of the scene. And so Shinji is just looking at like if as you're looking through the Shinji cutout, you're just seeing like some background object on the scene. And if you happen to recognize what else is there, you're like, oh, that's whenever Rei and Asuka are talking in front of an Eva. But so yeah, there's definitely some moments there where it looks like pure nonsense flashing by. But yeah.
Well, and I think that the point of that is supposed to be it's all the moments of his life that have made him him. And so it doesn't matter if they're poignant or they're not poignant. It could be him using the restroom. It could be him destroying the first, angel. It's equally relevant in making who Shinji is in terms of from all his perspectives, from everyone else's perspective, all that sort of stuff. I will say there was one point that I was actually kind of surprised about. Showed different on my TV compared to my phone. I watched the first episode. I watched it on my TV the first time, my phone the second time, and that was when they have the. It's like a newsreel sort of thing in the first couple minutes of the show, and his dad is talking over it. And on my TV, it was a fast flickering, and I was like, "Holy crap! I'm glad I do not have epilepsy or something because I would be getting a seizure from this." And then I watched it on my phone, and it was like, well, this is just fine. This is just normal static. So I was a little surprised by that. And that was just a note off the side. Gary?
It sounded like JC did some pausing during that. I specifically gave up on pausing in this show. Did anyone else pause during that fever dream? Okay.
I
think
would
then
have.
it's like
I would have if I had watched it by myself, but I'm learning to alternate watching it by myself and watching with Steven. It's it's rough. You want their company, but you also want to be able to take your damn notes.
Rude.
You could always just, if you on the next one, just don't take written notes, take voice notes. So then he has to listen to your voice notes and just voice note some really fucked up shit and just like see if you can get some reactions.
I
Captain's
mean,
log.
I did laugh afterwards when he was like, "So what'd you think?" And I'm like, well, "I'm not going to talk to you about it right now because that's for the podcast."
No. She says that, but that's actually a lie. She did.
Okay, I didn't say it out
respond to
loud.
with
In my head, that's what I said. Sorry, I know that doesn't count.
As in, this is almost in Gary's court. But what did you say exactly after we stopped watching this show?
You're gonna have to remind me exactly, but it was something to the effect of like, I have no clue what's going on, and it was. Is that the end? We're just done?
It? Yeah,
that's
it. Is that it? Is this done?
I was like, that was the finale? And he's like, well, we still have the movies. I'm like, good, because that is not a season-ending episode to me.
You missed out.
So
Go ahead,
I will say here, after my first watch, I kind of had something similar, maybe a little bit more harsher, but I was like, what the fuck? That's the end? That's how this fucking show ends? It's just like that? Everybody's standing around going, congratulations? It's like, the fuck?
Congratulations.
So, the second and third watch were a little bit less harsh on that, but I was still just like, the fuck did I just watch then? Like, is there more coming or something like that? So, I will share in that I was slightly confused about how it ended like that and why it ended like that.
I have no further insight as to why it ended like that for the show. Really, just we'll see. And like I said, there's apparently disagreements among the fandom about what the coming movie means. So yeah, I will be curious to rewatch it with this very in-depth rewatch of the season in mind as I go into it.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. To some extent, I feel like there are moments within this episode where I feel like Anno, the creator of Evangelion, is talking beyond just the characters in the show, where he is talking about more the culture around fandoms and things like that, where he's talking about Shinji's talking about all I have is the Eva, and everyone's saying like you can't just have the Eva, because if you just have the Eva, then once the Eva is gone, you lose yourself. You have to be more than just this one thing. And to me, that's also a moment of saying like you can't just be the anime guy, you can't just be the sports guy. You like, be more than just one thing. Focus on who you are in a greater sense. Okay.
I actually had a question about specific plot questions. So if Steven actually has a response to your question, I'll pass.
I do. I wanted to echo that, and I wanted to say that I entirely got that same sort of feeling. You can't be one single person. You can't base yourself off of one thing and it's the entire saga. Shinji wants to feel special, and by feeling special, that means that he has purpose. If he has purpose, that means that that is his justification to other people and to himself as to why he is there. And you can't have only one thing to make yourself, I mean, if you want to even be special, to make yourself special. You are special because of multiple different attributes that you bring to any specific anything. Like Gary made fun of me the other day because I'm pretty sure anyone who's ever heard this knows, I'm a pretty big nerd. And I also went to like a college football game the other 2-3 weekends ago, and he was like, "You go to a college football game?" I'm like, "Yeah, I go to a college football game. I fucking love football." And it's just and I entirely understand. It's not something that I super like show everyone, but it's another portion of me to which
Another layer.
and exactly, it's another layer. That's exactly it.
Onions have layers.
To answer the question, I just knew you as a political science major, someone I used to work with, someone who loves big words, loves reading thick leather-bound books, and loves history. That like so it's like,
typical
and
sports
then you
show,
add
right?
college football into that, and I'm like, whoa, where the hell? Like, what have I missed? What else don't I know about him? Is he a terrorist?
You'll never know, Gary. You'll never know.
Oh my god!
But I have many leather-bound books, and my library does smell of rich mahogany.
Holding a leather-bound book up into the camera, and I am losing it right now.
It's just
oh my gosh, he's got a collection.
They're all journals, guys. There's literally nothing in them. Don't get too excited.
That's
sorry.
His manifesto.
Wow.
I hear that's his manifesto. You got to watch out.
All of them are his manifesto. Yeah, just keeps going.
He probably didn't like the word choice in the first one, so he had to rewrite it.
Yeah, if your manifesto doesn't span at least 5 leather-bound books, what are you even doing with your life?
Anyway, that's all I have is just the response to like Steven being a multi-layered onion. Amanda?
I don't know how to follow up to that.
What were we even talking about?
I don't.
Just the layers
People
of
being
humanity.
people being complex.
You guys made me think. Like Steven and I mean, our daughter's she's over 2 years old now. But like, and while I am absolutely obsessed with her, and she takes over, I very happily have her taking over my life. I am very much aware. In the background, Steven and I have had many talks about how like we still want to make sure that we are our own people. We want to set that example for her. But I'm also like aware of this like. Someday she's going to leave me and go off on her own life. And what do you do when that drug that you've gotten used to is just torn away from you? I don't intend to have my personality fall apart because it's all that one thing, or at least that is my intention now, gentle listener. Let's see what happens, 16 years from now.
Yeah.
But I was
Season
thinking the
20,
same
whenever we're
thing.
going over that new Gundam show, we'll find out how she pulled it up.
Exactly.
Oh. Okay, now I have plot-specific questions for the first half of the episode. I didn't catch the first time. I caught the second time that you get. I didn't pull up the names. The scientist lady,
Ritsuko.
Ritsuko.
Ritsuko. You get a snap of Ritsuko's mom's chalk line, and I feel like that contradicts Steven's theory that like all of this takes place in Shinji's head, because Shinji wouldn't know that story. Like that would be a very... So I took it as just like, this is chaos being explained by a narrator, and then we jump into Shinji's crazy. Steven?
My only response to that is I did not, in fact, say that it's all taking place in his mind. It is and maybe we should probably talk about that too. What is instrumentality? It's to me, it's the hive mind of everybody effect, of everyone becoming one with everyone else, and that's why, like, guy who we know is dead, who got shot. Well, we don't know he's
Kaji.
dead, I guess. Kaji. That's why Kaji showed up in the last episode. Because the hero. Because he has people's memories, and there are a whole bunch of memories of who he was. So he might be dead, but everyone else remembers him. Therefore, he exists. So my idea is also, yes, this is all happening in Shinji's mind, but because Shinji's mind is intermeshed with all these other people's minds, this memory is also available to him.
It's
and that's how I took
memory.
it. It is now a communal memory. We should also discuss whether at the end of this, is hive mind really the way to go? Is it really? Because
Stephen will take you down that rabbit hole. And I really hate to quote Dumbledore here, Stephen, but of course it's happening in your head. Well, why on earth does that mean it isn't real?
Whoa, man, whoa.
I don't usually
You
get
just
that
blew
kind of judging look from Gary.
That was a random like second catch. The something I caught on the first catch. Did anyone else catch Misato's phone when she's talking to Kaji? Did anyone see the weird thing about the phone?
Oh, it was cut. It's cut.
It was cut. I was like, oh, does that mean that like obviously it is speaking to Misato's mayhem in her brain, and but it's just the fact that it was cut. And I don't know if that was supposed to symbolize that she ripped the phone off the wall after the voicemails, or it was just like
I didn't
just
catch
the fact that somebody's talking on a phone and it's not connected to the wall. So they're talking to themselves, in fact, which is a good parlay into the whole episode of just somebody having lots of internal monologue.
Parlay.
Parlay? That's not the right word?
Oh no, it's a joke. Don't you be talking about no parlay.
I didn't get it.
Don't worry about it. It's a bad joke. It's not a good joke.
Okay.
And this might be a bit of a segue too, but Stephen talked about the instrumentality. I was like, in this case, feel like I just don't understand, and I'm like, I need someone to explain to me what the instrumentality is, because while I get the concept that Stephen's talking about for the hive mind, I have trouble understanding why on earth the council would care less about making that. Like, how does that make us survive? If they cared less about, in terms of an emotional state, they would not be treating people the way they're currently treating them. So like, I'm missing something vital here.
So I have an answer to that. I don't know whether it's right or not, so I'm up to being contradicted by... I'm sure Gary will tell me I'm wrong. I think that the instrumentality they talk about and the hive mind that they talk about, fixing everyone, making everyone better, comes from when this was produced. It was produced in the 90s. You just had the Soviet Union fall, but we're just getting out of the Cold War. We are just getting out of the time of nuclear apocalypse was ever present. And in this what's his name? The creator, JC?
Hideaki Anno.
in Hideaki's mind, he grew up during the Cold War. I'm sure that his biggest memories were during the Cold War, and that would be, what are the Stephen is wrong, yes. So the biggest threat to humanity during the Cold War was humanity. It was people not understanding one another, people fighting one another for different ideological reasons. And we won't go into that debate here because I have strong opinions on it, but I won't. But the way that you fill that hole in everyone's, and that's what I think the creator's saying, is that hole in everyone causes them to act out, to really try to like what Asuka is she fights people because she has a hole in herself that she's trying to fill with other different things. This instrumentality fills that hole, so you have less fighting, and you don't come down to that nuclear apocalypse option. So I think it's due to the time it's created. I think it's something that we might not understand anymore because it is coming out of the Cold War, and regardless of what we think about nuclear weapons, and I'm sure we've all thought about them at some point in our lives, we haven't thought about them as much as someone who grew up during the Cold War. None of us grew up in well, Amanda was alive for a couple of years in the Cold War, and so was Gary. But but other than them, no one else was I don't think, I have no idea what people's ages are, but they weren't alive during the Cold War. And that's just not something we can understand.
Stephen, when did the Cold War end? I want to grab out my abacus to figure out if I was alive during that point.
I guess technically,
I don't use an abacus. That's too
Depend-
newfangled for me.
it kind of depends on how you view it, but it would probably ended about 89. The fall of the Berlin Wall was in 92, so you could define it by 92. And if that's the case,
define it by what Disney movies were out at the time, because I was trying to figure out 92, like what Disney movies are out.
Harry, this will surprise you, but my knowledge of presidencies is better than my knowledge of Disney movies. So I could define it to you in terms of presidencies, but not in terms of Disney movies.
I'm gonna find this out for you, Gary. Don't you worry.
I was gonna say maybe Little Mermaid. I think might have been 91. I don't think it was Aladdin yet, so it might be in like Little Mermaid maybe. That's my.
Anyway, that's my.
To explain. Actually, Stephen, I have a better analogy. Batman 1989 came out in 1989. So
you're right. That is
you could say that Batman ended the Cold War.
You could say that. I will think about it very hard.
You'd be wrong.
Anyways, the point I was trying to make was that this specific creator's entire world had grown up around humanity being humanity's biggest threat. And I think you could sort of still say that, but at the time that was significantly more acute than it is nowadays. And so filling the hole in your heart is a way to maybe prevent that and to save humanity in that regard. JC?
I think that's speaking more to the in-universe lore reasons. I think that is ultimately what they're going for. I have a whole conspiracy board that I was putting together at one point of the different motivations that we hear from Seal and the Council, and a lot of it mostly comes from episode 24. They talk about wanting to bring forth the future by their own hands. So to go full Pepe Sylvia here on you a little bit, I believe the whole thing is that the angels are foretold in prophecy, essentially, that they're going to come and essentially attack humanity. And Seal, I think, is trying to prevent humanity's destruction by initiating instrumentality to become this mass hive mind consciousness. And that's their hope for ascending to a higher realm, ascending to a different state. And that's their way out of, they can't be destroyed if they essentially become God, if they return back to their original progenitor form. As to the extra motivations of why they think that's the coolest thing to do, I don't know about all that, but I could see that being the solution, being influenced from all those different upbringings that Anno went through, like Stephen was mentioning.
And I'll just bring up that there were a lot of, I think I brought this up before as well, but there are a lot of science fiction writers around starting in the 70s, going through the 90s easily, that, and even today still, that bring up hive minds as a state that humanity should strive to in some regard or form to make everyone better. So this isn't like necessarily something that's just way out of the blue. It is something that's been around. I couldn't even begin to speculate whether this creator had ever read Isaac Asimov, but never know.
Nice Isaac Asimov reference there, Steven. Drop in.
Oh, thank you.
Who is Isaac Asimov?
A very famous science fiction writer, wrote the Foundation series, if you've ever heard of that.
You ever see the Will Smith
back
movie
to
I,
books.
Robot? There you go.
Oh,
It's a
I hear Will
completely
Smith is really good
ridiculous.
in that movie.
Oh, that's painful. That was hurtful.
If you ever want to, just is the audience, if you ever want to hurt Steven's feelings and he mentions a book, reference the movie to that book that is, and it usually, as with Par, usually movie recreations of books are very poor. So that's usually a good way to twist the dagger of like, oh yeah, I've never read that book, but I've seen the movie. The movie was okay.
Gary, the fact that you know how to hurt me so badly injures me further.
Very specifically and very accurately.
Last night we had a long conversation about The Hunt for Red October and Clear and Present Danger, and I was like, yeah, I think the movie's probably better.
I love
Anyway.
The Hunt for Red October, but the book, I read the book second, and the book was also amazing. Steven's walking away. He's literally that mad at you.
He needs another drink. He needs
Yeah, put up with you.
Steven, did you catch the writer reference in the title of this episode? Harlan Ellison apparently has a short story called The Beast That Shouted Love at the World.
No, I did not.
And apparently in Japanese, AI is one of the words you can use for love. So the beast that shouted I at the heart of the world. There you go.
Oh, I did not catch that at all. And I'm going to have to put that on my reading list now.
There you go.
The reading list. What are you in middle school? Jeepers.
You know what? I got to rack up those AR points somehow.
Get it on your Goodreads.
Yeah. Okay. So something I did during this episode, I haven't done in other episodes. I watched the intro song. I gave it one last chance, last episode. And I actually will give it a little bit of credit. It's still crazy, but it doesn't mention giant robots or giant monsters nearly as much as it does like this boy and his like kind of the natural arc of Shinji's creation, his job, and how his job destroys his life. Like it makes it blends a little better than like I thought. Which maybe if I would have paid attention to the song, I would have had lower expectations. JC?
I would say, speaking of music, this is the perfect episode to have watched that intro theme because we then get some great renditions of it near the end, where it's one is this very violin version, and then they swap to a piano guitar version at the end. Yeah, that's the music. I don't recall catching it on my previous watches, but then the first time listening through and catching it this time, I was realizing that, wait a minute, this is Cruel Angel's Thesis. This is amazing. And yeah, now it's my favorite part of the soundtrack.
I also did catch that. I'm glad you mentioned it because I forgot about it. I did notice that during the episode, and also when I watch these episodes on my own, I usually do skip the intro because I know the song. I have it like on my running playlist. It's good to go. But Steven sets the rules when we watch the show together, so he always watches the intro, and I'm like, whatever, it's fine. But that's easily my favorite part of this entire thing. Is I just love the opening music enough. What is this face for, Gary? You're muted. I can't hear you yelling at me.
Sorry, I always forget to unmute. Why do you watch anything with Steven? He sounds like such a tyrant. Like, you can't take notes. You have to watch the intro song. You can't pause the episode. Like,
Look,
you
I
just have to
take
sit
personal
there
offense at this
quietly
right now.
and watch. What are you saying, Steven? Sorry.
I take personal offense at this right now.
Steven, is it not true?
I make you watch it correctly.
Everyone has their own truths, as we learned in this episode.
Exactly.
Yep. Steven just imposes his on others.
So I have one more question that's more of a philosophical-ish question for the group on this before we get into Gary's hard facts. And that's, what do you guys think about the idea the idea towards the end of the episode that I think what they're trying to get is life is what you make of it, and the impression of the world around you. They say to Shinji, this is one of the possible worlds, and it goes into this really. It's a different type of anime. It's definitely an anime, and it has all the very regular anime tropes between I can't be late on my first day of school. Oh, did you get a look at her panties? Oh, just a glimpse. Ha ha ha. It's a very base anime sort of thing, and anyone that would ever watched anime would recognize that is nothing anywhere near what this show is, but it is a very common anime theme. And apparently that is one of the worlds that Shinji exists in his mind, and one of the things that he can create in his mind. And I didn't take a lot of exception with most of this episode, but one of the things that I did take exception was that just by perceiving the world differently, he could have made the world into something like that from the world that he existed in. And I understand looking at things optimistically and looking at things positively and putting your own spin on them. Like what they say, good things can happen in a rainy day. And that is true. 100% true. I love rainy days. But I don't think you can take the post-apocalyptic world that Shinji does exist in a physical sense and say, if you just perceive the world differently, this is what you really could have had. It's oversimplistic to me, and I just want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Gary.
First of all, Steven is wrong. Got that out of the way. Okay. I did not take it as alternate universes, like multiverse, whatever the hell Steven was sprouting on about. I took it as this is what Shinji imagines the world could be like if there weren't angels, if there wasn't an ongoing world crisis. Like, in his ideal world, he's growing up in a perfectly nuclear family whose mother is making breakfast. His dad is reading the newspaper. Like, Asuka is not a terrible human being. In fact, they're quoted words, childhood friends. And then Rei is just like this girl that has normal girl problems. So that's how I interpreted it. It wasn't that like an alternate universe. It's just like him comparing the storm that his life has become to like, what would life be like if I didn't have to fight monsters? If the monsters didn't exist? I could be part of a nuclear family. My mother wouldn't be dead. Asuka's life wouldn't be destroyed. Rei, even though she's a clone and I don't really understand how her parentage works in this alternate timeline, it's just a normal girl. And then when they get to the classroom, he's not a shy, destroyed boy because his dad's not a Bond villain. He's just this guy, this kid who's having other like teenage boy conversations with the other teenage boys in the classroom. Like, that's how I take it. It's his imagination what his life could be like if the monsters didn't exist. JC?
Yeah, I could see that read on it. The concept to me is, it's Shinji sort of just looking at his life, and I took it somewhere between the two reads where Shinji is imagining like the best case scenario for all these people in his life that he knows as it relates to himself as well. But I do think the show then takes that to that level that Steven mentioned, because as he snaps out of it, is like, oh, this is a possibility of this world. This is a possibility inside me. And Masato says, like, yeah, if you hold on to that outlook, the real world isn't such a bad place. It's like, okay, but that really can't happen. They already exist in a world with the giant robots and all these things. Like, they can't. Shinji and Asuka can't become childhood friends now. That's just not life. But it could be some sort of quantum thing as well, where maybe they can sort of rewrite time. Like Kaji's here. Like, what? And who knows what the rules are in Instrumentality to a sense. But what I took away from that was mostly just like that hope that Shinji gets from that scene of that things can be better, that these relationships can be better than they are now. Amanda?
I also kind of took that as somewhere in between, because in terms of a hard truth, like like obviously that can't be. As you said, there's some physical facts there you can't get around. They can't be childhood friends now. But there were some truths in it. I feel like that was an idealized version of Shinji looking at it, because he's also like, I had the thought when he was being like, "Oh, all these people, I have no, they, this is what they view me as, so, and they all hate me because I hate me." And I was like, okay, but Shinji, like, you still exist independently of them. It was the same thing. Like, you can't change those physical facts, and if all of those people are gone, you would still be here. And I had this thought of, like, if a tree falls in the forest, does anyone hear it? Of course they hear it. Same thing. Like, Shinji, just because those people have those visions of you, you still have a you as well. That still exists as well. So I feel like he was taking the idealized version and ratcheting it up to 10 of like what he would love to see, but I didn't take it as this was a physical, actual, possible truth that could have happened.
I actually thought that he was taking this and saying, like, okay, if I didn't have monsters in my life, I could be happy. Okay, now I destroyed the last monster. Like, I need to try to, happy ending BS. Like, I need to live my life as if I lived my entire life in a universe without monsters. I didn't find out that Rei is a cyborg. I didn't have to deal with Asuka. By this point, Asuka, I have no context to where anyone is. We haven't had a real world moment in time in like 2 to 3 episodes. Like this, the last 3 episodes could have taken place in 10 minutes in real world. Like, there's no understanding of time. Like, it just went off the rails, and the last 3 episodes are in Shinji's head. Like, so he's just whatever. But yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought, because that's just, I had that as a note of like, this was 20 episodes of real world things happening and 6 episodes of just like crap in Shinji's head. Like,
I mean, I guess I will add that I liked it. I didn't think about it like you had brought up there, Stephen, how it's like it kind of falls into those anime tropes of how kind of a lot of that stuff works. But I liked it because there was like a little bit of hope and positivity there towards the end of like, this is what life could have been like for you, Shinji, uh, and everything like that. JC?
I'd go and look in the back through my notes on this section here. I did like one line from, we get to see a bunch of Yui in this episode, which is nice. And even in this little moment there, she just has a line, Gendo's just being a weird, stereotypical dad and just has his head buried in the newspaper. And she just goes, even though you're a grown man, you're no different from Shinji, which I think is still a somewhat apt thing. Like, I feel like Gendo is a little bit stuck in some older ways.
I'm clones.
Not
Anyway,
quite in that
I-
sense.
that's all.
But yeah. Go ahead, Steven.
I did notice in the Japanese version versus the American version, he almost seems to have a different attitude. And I've noticed that in a couple different things, and maybe that's just me not being able to, maybe there's a Japanese attitude that I'm just not able to read. But he seems a lot more, like, he doesn't seem necessarily there in the American version, but he seems far more withdrawn. And like when he says, yes, Yui, it's almost morose, or less,
I don't know what morose
even
means.
less.
What does morose mean, Steven?
Melancholy-ish.
Yeah, melancholy-ish, I'd say.
Okay.
Is that answer?
Not really.
Kind of like sad, forlorn, a little bit. Like
Okay. I will point out that you never
Design.
actually see his face in this episode. He's just behind a
Or
newspaper.
Huey's.
during that little bit. Yeah.
I think.
We
during
otherwise
that
see
little
them,
bit,
yeah.
you do see Yui's face. I thought she turns around, she's cooking.
Does she?
But is that because he's like a total emotional destroyer in this show? Like his glowing reflective sunglasses would just be like, oh wait, he's still an evil villain. Like not seeing his face makes it believable that maybe he's not the villain.
I don't
Steven?
know. I actually was gonna. Was wondering about that exact same thing. Was even in the most optimistic version of Shinji's world, he's still kind of a. I don't want to say a
Distant
deadbeat.
father?
He's not. He's not a deadbeat, but yeah, he's distant father. He's yes, Yui. Yes, Yui. Have a good day, son. It's like that. There's a dad in Stranger Things where everything is going wrong, and you just watch him. You're going, what the fuck are you doing, man? And he's like, oh, it must be the D&D things. You know, those kids. And the mom's like, bro, you got to get into this fucking family a little bit. You got to start paying attention. That's kind of what he seems like in there.
Maybe to take it slightly further is like Shinji has only known his father as basically being this person who pushes him away all the time and stuff like that. So when he's in this idealistic fantasy world, he can't picture what his father would look like in this very positive world. JC?
I can see that read on it too. To harken back to the original descriptor of him, I took it not necessarily as morose, but just I lost the word. Just he's at peace almost is how I took it. It's just like this is their daily routine. This is just what they do day in and day out. They're yep, she's gonna needle him about being late for work again, and he's just like, yeah, Yui. Like I could see a beaming Gendo smile hiding behind that newspaper in my mind whenever he says it, rather than just like blasé about it.
To throw out then some simple words for Gary, like serene or placid, maybe.
Yeah. No, does make sense. I know there's a Lake Placid. Is that it's like
Totally not at all involved in this.
just enjoy being the dumb person? It's just fun. It's just fun. I understand what you're saying, but like
You're not the dumb
maybe I
person.
don't know what that word means. Like
You
maybe,
threw a
maybe I
geography
should
reference out there. That was great.
Remember, Gary, what you
Yeah.
put out there is how others perceive you and give back to you.
ask.
Congratulations.
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 I will say speaking to instrumentality, knowing that this is just Shinji's instrumentality here that we're kind of looking at through most of the episode, Gendo does make multiple appearances, and I feel like he ends up having some decent moments with, like, even Shinji in this moment is kind of catching some moments from Gendo that are helpful. Gendo is the one that adds a constraint to Shinji's life whenever he's floating through the void and makes that solid ground and gives him bearings to then gain confidence and start going through the world and start making that realization. Without Gendo there, it's arguable that who knows if he would have come to that realization or how that necessarily comes to play there. But I just thought it was interesting that Gendo's voice was the one that came in and added that constraint.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious if you guys caught the Pen Squared alarm clock because you guys are big Pen fans.
Yep, I did.
I
I did
did,
see that.
I was just like, these kids
I
are gonna
approve.
love this Pen Squared joke.
Oh,
Although it
kids.
could be that Pen doesn't exist in this universe.
That was my read, is that this is the anime version of Pen in Shinji's life is just an alarm clock. They don't have because Second Impact didn't happen, so the penguins didn't have to go live somewhere else now. They're just still hanging out down in Antarctica.
Conspiracy theory number 1. Pen doesn't exist in the entire show. He's a mutual delusion.
But as we've learned through Instrumentality, if you have memories and experiences and that being is in your heart, it seems like you exist. We know Kaji's here. And at the end, Pen congratulates Shinji.
What if Pen is only in Misato's head, and that's how their interconnected hive mind has Pen?
Pen isn't real. The phone cord was cut all this time. Misato's apparently just a lunatic.
Yeah.
This is all.
She's a lunatic.
This is a security thing right here.
Misato is really the killer.
Masato's the killer. Masato's in the room with you.
Anyway, I just caught the Pen squared alarm clock, and I was like, oh well, that's. But yes, I mentioned it previously. The childhood friends, like on the first watch, I paused the episode to make that note of like, hold on, childhood friends, like, because on the first watch, like you're thrown into that kind of blind, and you think that until you get downstairs, you think that this takes place in Miss Misato's house. I didn't have enough context clues or pay attention enough to know what Shinji's bedroom looks like. So, what did Steven say?
Or I said, or pay attention enough. I just thought it was funny.
I don't pay attention. Anyway, but just the like childhood friends, and like Asuka is still at that like 11 of just being annoying, but then she drops like, oh, you don't even come, like your childhood friend is here. And I was like, whoa, like she would never ever say friend to Shinji. So something's weird here. And then they jump into like the one piece of like solid attempt at humor, which is there's a Morningwood joke out of nowhere. And then they're just like, go back to crazy fever dream. And did that joke need to be in there? I don't think so. I think it just maybe needed to lighten up the episode a little.
I mean, I think that just lends to that stereotypical anime humor and all that
so
stuff.
you think? I guess that would make sense. The stereotypical, like,
because it starts with the Morningwood moment, and then you get to the point where he knocks into Rei and he sees her panties, and then they get to talking at school, and then everyone's Toji is whipped by Hikari because they're apparently in a relationship in this timeline, and then Asuka is embarrassed when Rei says, "Are you his girlfriend or something?" So it's just all the stereotypical anime tropes coming out there.
Yeah, I got the sense that like Asuka's maybe like the neighbor's daughter or something. Like that's kind of the context I got. But in the make believe world, that, as I said, is there a real moment in any of the last couple episodes? I made that joke offhand, but I honestly, can someone disprove that there's been a real movement of time?
No, not at all. And that's why I said, I think 2 episodes ago, if anything is actually happening, we have one, and I don't remember what it was 2 episodes ago, but we have one final moment where we can actually say, this happened. And after that, it goes maybe not happening.
And you made that, I do remember that comment, because I was like, oh, well, yeah, I thought it was a dream the whole time. But yeah, that was I think a Freudian slip, because yeah, the whole rest of the show was just like in self-reflection. So yeah. I don't have any other notes for this episode. I have a lot of general show criticism at this point, but I'll hold that, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really know what else there was really much to talk about for this episode, because there was just kind of a lot of the philosophical pondering like we had gotten to at the beginning there. JC, do you have something there you want to pick up?
I have some specific philosophical questions to lead y'all into if there's no other specific questions from folks.
Let's bring it on.
First of all, so we've decided, and maybe we need to get into it more, but Instrumentality, the whole joining of everyone's hearts and everything like that. At first, in episode 25, we get the fact that Shinji is alone in the world, that he's rejected becoming one with the consciousnesses of everybody, and that's a lonely existence. And that's when they're saying, like, nope, it doesn't have to be this way. and now 26 is him finding a way to rejoin things. So do we think that Instrumentality was a success at this point? Like, from the congratulations scene and everything like that, do you think that he has accepted becoming one with a hive mind? Or is there something else going on with this whole process? Or is this just purely about him alone and we don't know? Gary.
Not playing dumb, but I just at some point I started tuning out all the instrumentality stuff because it just was like by the point that they really tried to hammer in instrumentality, like they've already had so many questions that don't get answered and don't get answered clearly that I was just like, oh, well, this either is never going to be explained or it's going to be explained sort of okay in a labored episode. So I just assumed it was just a fever dream in his head, and I left it at that. Stephen?
So I tend to think that, I guess this is a great question, first of all, because it doesn't give you an answer. It does let you just, it lets you off at the station, and you have no idea which station it left you at. I tend to believe that this was more of a, in Shinji's head, at least, this worked. Does that say anything for the wider version of Instrumentality? I'm not sure it does. Because what if someone rejected this advice I was coming at them? And I mean, I could see how this would drive someone insane instead of coming to a some sort of catharsis. It would just drive you nuts. I don't know. Maybe even if it drives you to that insanity point, you have one memory of someone who will bring you back from that insanity point. I don't think you can really say one way or another, was Instrumentality effective? I think that you can say it was effective for Shinji.
Is it possible that Shinji is the catalyst for the rest of Instrumentality there? Like, he is the domino that falls and then the rest come with him?
I don't know. It's like Asuka was having hard problems with Instrumentality. Now I'm going to forget her name again. JC.
Masato?
Thank you. Masato was having. She's not mentioned in these episodes, so she's there, but she's not really talked about too much. So her name's just flying out of my head. But she was having hard problems with Instrumentality. Rei wasn't really having too hard of problems with Instrumentality, but would Asuka have been able to come through some sort of catharsis through this? I think that's what we got to think of, because I think Asuka was having by and far the hardest time, because even though it didn't seem like it to us, when you get down to it, she was in the worst spot of probably everyone there. She had one thing going for her, and that was she was a pilot. She had no other life, and she was not able to be a pilot anymore. And where does that leave you? What is her next steps? So it doesn't tell us whether she was able to reach that synthesis to that. I keep saying catharsis, but whether she's able to reach that point. JC.
I know we the episode is approached as this is purely Shinji's Instrumentality, but the way that everything is kind of blending together, I think we do get glimpses into Rei and Asuka's Instrumentality a bit here as well, where Rei, we don't get a lot of her deep introspection really until maybe even episode 24, if not starting in episode 25, really, where we start to see that she just like has this longing to die, essentially. We get another reference to it at one point whenever they're doing the things that they don't like in flashbacks and different imagery flashing by, like, oh, a bright sunny day, I don't like it. And she mentions like the sun going down just makes I reminds me of things fading away, like I want to do, even though I don't want. It's scary and I don't like it. And Asuka talks about a bright day, a new dawn, essentially, on a day that she's not going to like. She's going to hate it. She doesn't like it. And at the end, whenever we get the moment where Shinji has his realization moment, it's Shinji, Asuka, and Rei's voices all at once saying, but still, maybe I can change and like myself. So I think that, personally, I took it as all three of them our main pilots, all 3 children here, have embraced instrumentality in some sense. But it could be Shinji identifying as those 3 as well and accepting it on behalf of them. I don't really know. Gary?
First of all, Steven's wrong. Asuka doesn't have it worse than everyone else. But I took that scene as all 3 of the pilots, or all of the pilots actually, being a pilot is the cornerstone of them being happy. Shinji he's a pilot so he could see his dad and get his dad's affection. Asuka's a pilot because she thinks that's the only way she's going to get praise. Rey is a pilot because she's a robot and she doesn't have a soul and she just wants to die. She just needs to. This is her job. The one guy. Toji is only a pilot so that his sister can get medical attention. Like, the only value they see in their life is being a pilot. Otherwise, they all see themselves as useless if they're not a pilot. I didn't get any of this instrumentality shit you're spouting out. I just caught that they only have human value if they're a pilot. Otherwise, no one values any of them. It used to be a general assumption that just Shinji felt useless without being a pilot. I think it's a general statement. None of the children feel any personal value unless they're a pilot.
I would agree with that as well, actually. We get that moment in this episode, which I think is great, where Shinji's in the middle of beating himself up, and then we get Kensuke and Toji, who had not previously been part of Instrumentality, really, coming in and saying, like, people have problems too. It's not just you. Like, we also have our own stuff. You're kind of a jerk for thinking you're the only one with problems that matter. And which is a great moment to me. That, like, yeah, other people are dealing with stuff. Like, yeah, he's the second. Shinji is the third children, but Toji was the fourth, and all those other classmates are potential children to be part of the EVA program. So we know that they've at least had something weird go on in their life to end up in Tokyo 3 in the first place. So there's other people have definitely had their own issues, and all the other pilots especially. Gary?
We mentioned that Kaji gets touched in this episode. When's the last time we've heard from Toji, the fourth children?
He is the fourth. The fifth, I think, was Kaoru. But there's a brief mention whenever Shinji's on the lake before he meets Kaoru that, like, oh, Toji and Kensuke, they've left the city in the wake of all this explosion stuff. And so they basically, that's why he can't talk to anybody at that point. And then Kaoru shows up to be his friend in time of need.
But yeah, definitely, like, he just circles back, and, like, of all the voices, he is at least a noticeable voice. Like, he's not a voice that kind of blends in with the general crowd shout. But I just thought it was interesting. I was just curious. Like he hasn't been around for a while. If anything, as soon as he became a pilot, he became much less important in this show.
Well, as soon as he became a pilot, he became grievously injured. So
Yeah.
he's like, hey, cool, I'm a pilot. Dead almost. But yeah, no, he comes back, and I appreciate. I feel like the American voice actor took some liberties with the script a little bit, whereas everyone in Instrumentality kind of speaks like they're just exposition machines a little bit, where it's like, yes, we are the Instrumentality, hearts of the soul, and just straight up monologuing despite any previous characterization. Asuka maybe is like the most characterized out of all of them, just because she yells it most of the time.
She's constantly yelling.
You idiot!
How do
This
I
is
deliver this line?
Instrumentality.
Just pretend you're constantly angry and yelling at everyone.
Right.
That's who you are.
But Toji at least would be like,
always at 11.
yeah, exactly. But Toshi will be like, oh yeah, you're making mountains out of molehills, bud. Like, just, yeah, he just very cool and casual, collected version of Instrumentality here, which I appreciated.
Do you have more questions, JC?
In terms of the actual end of the episode, we get to father, thank you, to mother, goodbye, and to all of the children, congratulations. Do we think this is actually Shinji's words? This is just like the blank the unspoken dialogue at the end here. Is this Shinji speaking it to his actual father, his actual mother, and to children, or is this creator speaking to the audience? How did you take that read, Stephen?
I took it as two ways. I think it was a double speak in terms of not double speak. That's a wrong way of saying it. It had two purposes. The first purpose was for the show itself, and I do believe it was meant to be for Shinji's father, for Shinji's mother, and for the children. And I think it was also for the creator. I don't think you put something in like that in a show and not have it have some sort of significant personal meaning. And what that meaning is to him, I don't know. But it certainly feels like it has some sort of certain meaning.
Yeah, I really hadn't thought of it until you just asked that question there, and I'd kind of agree. It has to have some meaning, and whether it's the creator thanking everybody or one of the characters in the show expounding some last bit of dialogue to the viewers or whatever, I could see it going either way. But I don't really have I don't have a definitive thought on it.
So I guess to follow it up, then, if we read it as Shinji saying to father, "Thank you," that means has Shinji fully come around on accepting Gendo as a positive figure of some sort in his life if he's thanking him at this point?
I don't think so. I think that he is thanking him for instrumentality in general. Much how you would thank a horrible warlord for saving your city inadvertently while they're on the warpath. It's what Gendo did helped Shinji. And so that in that regard, it helps Shinji. And I think Shinji says thank you for that. I don't think Gendo does anything to redeem himself as a father, because I don't think he did this for Shinji. And I'm not sure Shinji would see it as him doing it for Shinji. Shinji's doing it, or Gendo's doing it for the world. So in of that, Shinji is a part, but he's not doing it for Shinji.
Yeah, to be fair, heavy questions that also you can find plenty of discussions and theorizing about online. But yeah, just was
I'd like
curious
to know
what the
what's
others
the
read on.
theorizing. What's the theorizing on that?
So later, Anno gives an interview where he refers to Japan as a nation of children because they have their otaku culture and they are obsessed with their animes, and essentially saying, "Hey, you're a bunch of man children. You don't like your animes to have heavy themes like this." And so this is well after the episode aired and even End of Evangelion had aired and released. So it's debatable whether he meant that initially whenever he wrote it. But that is the debatable part about to all the children, congratulations. There's also no solid information about if he actually had a good relationship with his father that would merit a good thank you, or even a strained one that he worked through as part of the creation. So hard to say if there was any aspect there. In terms of the Shinji read, like the to all the children, that would the common interpretation is that should be a capital C, that he's talking to the other pilots. So yeah. Beyond that, yeah, to me, I read it as Shinji, and yeah, almost like you said, just an inadvertent thing that, in ways that Shinji is relatable to me, that like there's some father stuff in my past as well, and just coming to terms with the good parts of what that did to your life, even if it was through bad moments or whatever. But there are certainly ways that you can be influenced positively by bad moments, and in some sense, you have to acknowledge that those parts made you who you are. Shinji doesn't become who he is without Gendo being the way he is. And in order to accept your true self, I think that comes with part of that. So, to Father, thank you for making me who I am, even if it's someone who can never find you as a positive influence in my life. Gary?
Okay, sorry. I literally was like, I'll cough quick before he calls on me. So you mentioned the general internet. How did the general internet of people who always have opinions think about the ending of Congratulations? Did they have mayhaps strong opinions, or were they
Mayhaps.
very satiated by a very concise, meaningful ending?
I think we will get into that with the discussion of End of Evangelion.
I like it.
Overall, I
So
will
there's
say
some spoilers about on the internet response after Evangelion, but probably nobody's responding specifically at this point in time that's concise enough.
in terms of just to dip into IMDb ratings here, and just unless you guys really want to do the guessing, I can just straight up tell you.
This episode is shit.
It was more highly rated than episode 25. Episode 25 was a 7.9, dipping below the top rated 8.0 threshold. Episode 26 at 8.1. So clearly not near the top of the crop, but it is one of the top rated episodes. So yeah, I think especially with End of Evangelion, if you were to look up a basic plot summary, you'll see that it's essentially something that takes place kind of concurrently with episodes 25 and 26 of the show. And so it's debatable how much that was planned ahead of time, but there is definitely responses that Anno puts into the End of Evangelion that are the responses to criticisms given at the time, even well before the larger internet age. So yeah, we'll get into it more with that part, but there's plenty of criticism at the time. There's still plenty of criticism for how it relates now, but it gets touched on a little more later.
Are you telling me there's going to be more robots and monsters in the movie? I am slightly excited. No comment. That is such an enthusiasm destroyer. Is there going to be this in the movie? Just silence. I'm like, oh shit. Man, is this how you feel when you ask Steven questions during episodes? Like,
Yeah.
Is this gonna have robots? Nothing. No comment.
I will say the End of Evangelion on Netflix has a robot on the cover, so it'd probably safe to assume there's at least one.
One robot. Gotta hold out for my one robot.
It's the instrumentality of the Evas.
That's right.
For everyone's note.
No, I don't bother asking Steven questions anymore because either I'll get a "we'll see," or I don't actually like any spoilers for me. Like, I want to experience the movie as is, so I have to not look at him or talk to him about it because I know him too well and it'll give things away in his eyes.
So, 1 hour movie. Are you gonna still watch it under the tyranted eyes of Steven?
I feel like for
no
an hour
pausing.
I'm gonna need notes.
No,
I don't know.
No.
Either we'll do it twice and I'll take notes on my own second watch, or we'll watch it separate. I don't know. Stay tuned. We'll find out, guys.
I guess one thing I will say, slightly spoilerific, this is also a movie that you should not watch with other people around.
Got it.
How much warning do I need to give my significant other?
I was just going to ask, like, other people who aren't invested in the show like we are? Or?
Just like, I wouldn't watch it at work for at least the first half hour, probably. I can't remember exactly when certain
It's only an hour-long movie. You're telling me the first half an hour?
This is an hour and a half for interview.
Okay, so 1/3. Okay.
Yep. I just can't remember when exactly. It's an early-ish scene, but yeah, it's a gross one. Anyway.
Can't wait.
You never answer the question. At work, with a significant other, with children in the room. Like, where's that at?
No children, no coworkers. If your significant other, depends on how much you want to explain. If they're going to say, what is this? And you're going to have to explain it. So good luck.
My wife fully understands that I'm very frustrated watching this show, and I tried to explain it once. So I feel like if she's like, "What are you watching?" I was like, "It was JC's idea."
There you go. Fair enough.
Steven
was.
loves this show.
I do enjoy the show. I very much do. So, real quick question for everyone, and I think, well, I guess JC, do you have more questions, real quick?
That was kind of the bigger questions there. So
Okay, what was everyone's feeling at the end of this episode? And not like I know I already mentioned to Amanda, and Amanda was like, "Is that it?" sort of thing. When I watched the end of this episode, when we got to the end of this episode, I did feel a little bit uplifted. I did feel a little bit happier, which is not something I'm used to watching Evangelion. And I thought that was it was something that not having remembered what this episode was slightly surprising and kind of nice. I'll be very honest. After coming into the anticipation of maybe at least an ambiguous ending, to have a nice ending, everyone saying thank you or congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. It was a nice ending, and like what JC and what Tyler said, the ending song here, and Gary, you said it as well, I believe. The ending song here is really nice. The kind of it's a vocal version of the Cruel Angel's Thesis song. It all blends together fairly well.
Two things, and my camera's not working, so I can't tell if you guys are ahead of me. So I'm just butting in. My first reaction was, yeah, is that it? Like, that's the end of this. That is not an end of season episode. Where's the rest of it? But I did mention that I loved that little happy ending. As long as it's a happy ending, I have a very heavy dose of skepticism, especially knowing that there's an hour and a half long movie to watch yet. That there's going to be more to it than a, hey, Shinji's good to go now.
All's well.
right. To me, I have the same skepticism that he basically, especially like, it's not even that he's like, hey, I like myself. It's no, I still hate myself, but I can see a world where I might like myself. And that's the big congratulations moment, is that like, hey, it might get okay sometime later. Like it is a work in progress, and that's always the thing, is that it's never just a magical cure to get out of some bad funk like that, where it's a state of mind. It's all these things where you have to really change your perceptions, as he's told multiple times, and it's all these things that has to essentially just keep being worked at in order to see these results happen. So yeah, I see it as a skeptic moment of positivity, but it is a uplifting moment, and this is what I remember taking away from it, at least. So Steven's original description of the show as a just nonstop downer. This was what I was had in mind whenever there's that moment of like, no, see, there are some breakthroughs. It shows that there's a little bit of light in some sense if you work for it. Gary?
I was gonna let Tyler go first because everyone already knows my answer. So
I already gave my answer to when we were talking about that part with Amanda. Of like, when I ended the episode, I was like, "What the hell? That is it?" Here and everything. Subsequent rewatches and stuff like that, I was less that negative about it there. But overall, I don't think I like. There's still some negativity towards it, but that's also because now I know. Okay, well, there's a movie now coming. Maybe that's going to explain it, and I don't want to get into too much of my thoughts on the show overall and stuff like that, because we'll have that discussion at a later point in time. But it was just like, okay, that's how you ended the show. That's a weird way to end the show. Gary?
yeah, I also do remember that general, like, it's over, what the hell. But also I do, it was the realization that I think has been said by others, that the movie is a continuation of the answers everyone wanted. Like, it was very abrupt. So I sort of knew it was going to be abrupt, but I didn't expect to be that abrupt. Kind of just angry, just like, what the hell. And then after turning it off, I was like, okay, well, I took my notes, I went through the first time, and expletive, I have to watch this again tomorrow. Like, it's just I did not like these last couple episodes. They're just chaos filled, and they're not enjoyable. They're not enjoyable watches. Not because they're sad or happy or whatever. They're just not enjoyable viewing. They're not turn your brain off viewing. It's just like too complicated. I just wasn't looking forward to it. That was my reaction. But that's just as a reviewer. In general, yeah, I wasn't happy. I'm glad that Shinji had an arc completed, that he went from like kind of acceptance that like he's going to be a better person, but it was just a really abrupt, like, and the constant frustration I've had about this show, way too many open-ended questions, way too many unanswered. We don't know what happens to Rei 3.0. We don't know what's happening with Asuka, Masato, Gendo, all of the lab techs that don't deserve names and could have been consolidated into one person. Like, I just was like, I just had gotten kind of burned out on this show of like not answering questions. So I was just like, oh, well, that's your ending it. Like, I guess that's another double birds to me. Like, I guess you're never getting at questions to what any of these things are, or what is the Shadow Illuminati Color Council? What is this? It's like, nope, we're done. You can go talk to your friends at school and maybe they can explain it to you because there's no internet yet. So it had potential to be nice. The show just frustrates me too much to really give it a win and a happy. So that's all.
So real quick before I ask my next question, Tyler, are we going to talk about the episode or the season right now, or is that on a next episode?
I think the seasonal discussion will happen in our wrap-up episode.
Okay.
Unless you guys like really want to continue to stay up and keep talking about this. I mean,
no, it was only so, and I'll bring this up during that episode as well. It's only when JC had said that the thing that he remembers is always the last portion of the episode where everyone's clapping. The thing that I always remember, and for whatever reason this stuck in my skull, and this is why it was so depressing, was Asuka in that dilapidated building in the I was going to call it a sink.
The destroyed Tokyo 3 apartment.
The bath, in a bathtub with a very grimy water, just dying.
Yeah. Did anybody end up watching that Evangelion Death movie at this point?
That's on my list to watch. Basically, like I was going to watch it after we did this podcast.
Yeah, I watched some of it. I had read that it was a chronological ordering of events. Kind of.
Not so much.
It jumps a lot. It's like, so the Asuka bathtub scene is like 3 minutes into that movie, which is like, this is not what. And then it like cuts back to her as a kid finding her mom, and it's just like you're kind of like, hey, here's Asuka's deal, and it kind of hits you some major points, then kind of leads you through things, and it's a differently structured thing, but I don't know if it necessarily answers a lot.
Is it the Tarantino version where you kind of stay with one character for long enough to get invested and then go to another character instead of like?
Yeah, I would say it focuses more on the specific characters at a time. And yeah, it is covering episodes 1 through 24. So before any of the instrumentality mind stuff happens, you're just getting a recap of all those events leading into End of Eva. So something potentially worth watching if you're just like wanting to go back and recollect. I assume most folks probably weren't watching with multiple note-taking sessions and rewatches and stuff like we have for the podcast. So I'd fall back again and say that it's completely optional now. There's a fun motif that the classical music enjoyers among us might like, where all the folks end up, like Shinji comes in and plays his cello, and then Asuka comes in and plays and it's like a musical structure to the whole thing in the background. Chassis?
And I think I've said this a couple of times too. It's like I want to watch it to number one, just watch it, to experience it. Number two is just kind of also, I think it'd probably serve as a good refresher for me going into the movie then of, okay, this is some of the stuff that happened earlier in the show.
JC made a classical music reference, and I very much gave a thumbs down. Steven's not even paying attention, so it wasn't even worth criticizing classical music. So,
Oh, that's kind
fuck
of you.
Beethoven, and that's all I have to say.
Classical music is the shit, by the way.
It gives you the shits. That's what it does.
You're listening to some very big bass in that classical music, then, sir.
Gary found the brown note. Do we have any more questions, comments, thoughts, discussions for the episode?
Maybe one.
Okay.
We all know that this episode is followed by a movie. If this episode had not been followed by a movie, if we had watched it when this came out, how would you have felt about that end? Would that ending have changed for you at all? Just thinking that is the end. There is no more.
I would consider the show a mini-series then, because it just has a middle, beginning, and end. It goes somewhere. It doesn't need to make sense. And ultimately, it'll be on reruns every Christmas until you die.
I would have assumed that they just got cut off and just stopped.
Yeah, I mean, with as many, like, not even saying the movie's going to answer all of those questions and stuff like that, too, with as many, like, it feels like threads still kind of hanging out there at the end of the show, I'd have been like, okay, the show just must have got canceled then or something like that after season 1, so they couldn't come back and answer all those questions. But then, now as I'm saying that out loud, is that Tyler in 2024 thinking that, or if Tyler goes back to 1995 with the way shows were done, does that same logic still apply there and everything? But
yeah, I guess to turn it back to Steven, since you have not watched End of Eva yet, did you know previously going into this discussion that End of Eva was such a follow-up? And so
I did not.
what were your thoughts on the show, knowing that was, as far as you were considering it, that was the end of the show?
So I did not know that there were other movies associated with this. I just heard of Evangelion, and I know that it was a classical anime, and I wanted to see the classical anime and to understand it a little bit better. That being said, I come into shows very well. I shouldn't say very well prepared, but I am also not going to be upset if it leaves ambiguous endings or with ambiguous plot lines through it. If it seems to be intentional to me, then I'm going to try to understand what they mean by the intent. And that's how this felt to me, is that it was an intentionally ambiguous ending. I mean, that said, like I have already said, I forgot the last episode before we watched this all again. I do remember that it didn't have a solid ending, like a cutoff point. I didn't remember if it was good or bad. But I remember it was ambiguous, and I remember being okay with the ambiguity. And in my mind, thinking that the creator left in that ambiguity specifically to add on to the show itself, because a lot of creators do that. They add ambiguity specifically because that allows the watcher to take their own creativity or their own knowledge, what they have in their own head, and add on to that show and create the show, make the show into something of their own. Where if you're spoon-fed it and you were given a solid ending, that is a solid ending. If you were given an ambiguous ending like what we have right now, we all have different theories, and not one of us could say that our theory is 100% correct. Between Gary and myself, and there's a gulf of theory between Gary and myself there in whether this is good or bad. Neither of us are right or wrong because it's ambiguous ending. So we have two different takes of the show, which are equally valid, and I don't think you can say that for many shows that have those very strong endings or hard endings. And I like that. And so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ending, not thinking that there is a solid ending. And I will not having watched the movie yet, I might be disappointed if there is a very solid ending in the movie. So I'm not going to look into it at all, but we will find that out.
And yeah, to at least somewhat answer the question on my side, that I knew going into it that there was the full season and then the movie. So I hit 26 and I was confused. I didn't know what was happening. I could have told you any of the major concepts of Instrumentality, probably, honestly, because I was doing the Netflix binge thing and just blew through it, and my mind was LCL puddles at that point. And so yeah, just moved on to the movie to be like, maybe this answers things. And so yeah, I didn't have the experience to really say how it would feel to just hit that point and not know the next part. I don't think that inherently I would. There are such strong episodes and themes throughout the show that I don't know if I would have said the whole show is bad or anything like that. Like getting to that point that it was a waste of time. I would still say that I don't know if I were rewatching the whole season, if that were just it, that I would watch the whole thing every single time, or if I would just watch up to 24 and be like, okay, that was cool stuff. Back through to episode 1. But yeah, I think it on specific rewatches here, I'm learning more about how they're approaching the themes, and I think there's a lot more great takeaways from that. Chauncey?
I was just going to comment for this discussion. I wrote down a great talking point for when we get to the discussion of the show as a whole. All right. Did we have anything else, or are we ready to take this episode to the end?
I don't have anything else.
JC?
I think I'm good.
All right. Gary is good. Amanda, did you have anything further you wanted to touch on?
Nope, good.
All right. Well, that'll then conclude it for this episode. Next time, JC, we are watching...
We're watching End of Evangelion, which consists technically of 2 episodes, which have their own specific titles. They are End of Evangelion Episode 1, Air, or Love is Destructive, and End of Evangelion Episode 2, Sincerely Yours, or I Need You.
All right.
Is there an just curious? Is there an episode break in the movie, or is it just?
I think I recall there being like a midpoint in the movie where it's like, oh, here's credits, and then you resume the story just right after
Popcorn
credits are
break.
done.
Yeah. Just get up, use the restroom, get some popcorn, and come back to your seat.
Yep.
Intermission.
Watch a clone ray float through a moon or whatever happens for the credits there. Yeah.
All right, then. So that'll then do it for us for this episode. Tune in next time for, as JC said, we discuss the End of Evangelion. Jellion, all those words.
Evangelion.
Evangelion.
Oh boy.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good one.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.